Okay, so we're starting to level off there, so I'll kick everything off. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Chris Mann. I'm the sponsorship specialist at the Halifax Chamber of Commerce and your host for today. It's my pleasure to welcome you to all to today's Navigating COVID-19 webinar on mental toughness, money mindset, and a strategically leveraged network. There's a new market in this new normal. Most businesses need a new sense of urgency to bring in more money. So today we're going to learn about 3 tips on how to fast track revenues. This is an opportunity to ask questions on your lost revenues and future of business. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them below in the Q&A box. And if you're commenting in the chat box, I would encourage you to address your message to panelists and all attendees so everyone can see the post and may be of interest. There's also the option to address your message to all panelists, which only I and Debbie will be able to see. So I'd like to introduce you to Debbie Adams, an entrepreneur from PeopleCan Training and our presenter for today's webinar. Debbie Adams is an award-winning entrepreneur and 3-time published author, including Money Mindset, How Changing My Mind About Money Helped Me to Succeed as an Entrepreneur. She helps entrepreneurs fast-track revenue so that they themselves take themselves off the front line and start doing things today that they plan to do someday. So welcome, Debbie, and I'll throw it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chris. I am delighted to be here. We're going to jump right in, and I usually get to see the comments. I'm just going to operate as if I'm going to get to see the comments here. So I want people to tell me why it is that they joined us today and pick A, B, or C. But I'd also like for you to tell me what your business is and what problem you solve for your clients. And I say that because one of the first things that we need to learn how to do very quickly is get clear on the problem that we're solving. And the problem that I help people solve is fast tracking revenue. That's it. So you need to get that clear. So fill that in the comments, if you will. In this webinar, you're going to walk away with one thing, and that one thing is this. You're going to understand the importance of a strategically leveraged network so that you can get out there and hit the ground running. And if I've imparted that piece of wisdom on you today, then I've done my job right. If you stay with me until the end, I'm going to give away 1 hour free coaching. But you have to stay with me till the very end, because it's there that I'm going to teach you, or I'm going to show you how it is that you get your name entered into this draw. So you want to be sticking around for that little bit. The question, I suppose, that people need to ask is, why is it that I'm the person that can sit here and tell you about the importance of money mindset and mental toughness and this whole notion of strategically leveraged network? And I've got to tell you that I was a forced or reluctant entrepreneur. I had the best career in the world. I was a soldier, and I absolutely loved doing it. Joined the military when I was 17. By the time I was 29, I had lost my vision. I'm a legally blind entrepreneur, and I had to leave the military. And it was back in a time when there were not a lot of supports for transitioning soldiers. And we had to get out there and beat the streets and find our own work. And often we were not prepared to do so. I went back to university with the understanding, as people from the blue collar world often have, that understanding that if I get enough education, somebody will hire me. And that was not the case. 2 years after I graduated, I still wasn't finding any work. I had a ton of barriers to employment, and somebody mentioned that I should become an entrepreneur and start selling some of the knowledge that I had accumulated over the almost 50 years by this time. And so I did. I took that big leap into entrepreneurship. You're going to learn more about me as we go, but for now, know that when I entered into entrepreneurship, I didn't want to be there. And for the first couple of years, if somebody had to come along and said, you know, Debbie, we're looking for somebody with your skill set, your competencies, I would have been the first person to raise my hand and say, I'm your gal, I'll go to work for you. So I say that just so I can stress that whenever I'm teaching anything in my workshops, it's always something that I have had to learn. And now we're going to get into the meat of this. You know that it isn't enough just for us to show up at a networking event with a bunch of other people and hope that our business will grow on its own. It's so necessary that we be very strategic about growing our network, and nowhere is that urgency more important than it is right now in the economy that we're facing. As a matter of fact, I would be willing to wager that the people who have this thing called a strategically leveraged network are the people that are going to do better. But let's back up a bit. I have kind of prepared this model to kind of show you the journey of entrepreneurs, or definitely my journey into entrepreneurship. And I call that first stage eagerness. When I got over that hump, and I had that day where I just burnt my resume because I could not apply for one more job. I applied for 3,000, by the way. I tore up my resume and said, that's it, I'm all in. I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to make this work. I think I'm somebody who does that universe stuff, right? So I think the universe saw that I was serious and things started to change a little bit. What I wasn't was networked in any way. So I had not spent, I'd moved all around Canada, lived in 8 provinces. I didn't come over from corporate and have a big network of people in a very specific area. I was in Nova Scotia. I've lived here for 16 years, but I had only moved here when I started university. So when I was out there trying to grow a business as this very eager entrepreneur, I would attend every networking event possible. You're in this stage if you're collecting a ton of business cards. You get them, you're sorting them out. You might call somebody out for a coffee, and then after all the dust settles, all you hear is crickets. Crickets. You're not making any sense. The next stage in business is the excitement stage. And for me, the excitement stage came when I picked up a contract. It was out of province and it was for $16,000, which is a fair chunk of change. Now, I want to tell you that when I started in business, this urgency to make money was there. I was living on a very small disability pension and I went bankrupt the year that I started. So when I tell you that I needed to make money, I'm not kidding. I didn't have a secondary income in the home. I'm the primary money maker. That place where I picked up that $16,000 contract, I think that was the day that I thought, oh, I've made it. I'm a business person. That's it now. I'll never have to work hard ever again because I've turned the tap on. It's going to start flowing. You talk about naive. I made $16,000 in 4 weeks. And then for 8 months, I didn't make one penny. I did my year end, and I'm in my business. I made $16,000 for the whole year. And it cost me about $20,000 to make that. So I was going in the hole. And then I started to figure out that I needed a network. I needed people to know who I was and the problem that I was solving, but I had the same barriers to entrepreneurship that I had to employment. I'm visually impaired. I have panic attacks when I go into large groups of people, which is why now, I'm always at the front of the room, so I don't have to mingle. And nobody really knew who I was. And I saw one of the ways, with the help of a business coach, one of the ways to remedy that problem was to open a storefront. So in 2015, I opened PeopleCan training in Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia, and I operated that for 3 years. And enter the exhaustion phase. So at the end of 3 years, I had really hustled, $3,000 of overhead a month, the urgency again to make money. And my second year in the storefront, I made $52,000. It cost me $50,000 to make it. You can see now I'm not any further ahead and I'm getting exhausted. That's my exhaustion phase. But the clients that I work with may be in business 30 years or more, and they're still at exhaustion phase. The next phase is the strategically leveraged network phase. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But for clients, I want to give you an example of a client that I'll work with, somebody who's a cement finisher, for example. He's been doing cement commercially for 30 years. And every year he has a good year. Every year it gets a little bit better. And every year when it comes time to start up after the season shuts down, he doesn't have money to start up. But he always has access to a network, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. He has one of the pieces that are necessary in that he has somebody that he can turn to ask for help with those startup costs, because that is the way that his business is managed. It's not a great way to do business, because at the end of 30 years, you should be moving into a different direction, but it isn't always the case. What's happened with some people right now is that they've been in this, this ideal state of strategically leveraged, and this coronavirus has kind of given them a hit that's putting them back into exhaustion stage again. So let's talk about what that stage looks like. And if you have a little look at the graph that's in front of you, you'll see that eager and excited and frustrated and strategically leveraged, and my red line, which is the critical line. But at that eager stage, you have folks like you. I mentioned it before. You go to a networking event, you're meeting people like you who are trying to sell you something, you're trying to sell them something, and nobody's really getting very far. Every now and then you may get a little sale. At the excited stage, you have people like you, but you're starting to develop colleagues. So let's talk about Edward, the cement finisher. He now knows Bob, the electrician, and they know each other, and they're starting to share a little bit of business, but they don't really know. Nobody's ever really given them instruction in how to do it strategically. They're just kind of winging it. Bob says, I know a fellow who needs a driveway done. Here's an opportunity for you to pick up a little bit of work on the weekend. So you see how this is working organically without them having to do it. But imagine if they knew how to do it strategically. In the frustrated stage, many people get rid of the folks that are like them because they haven't learned how to leverage that yet. And they're still with their colleagues. And these people, after years over year, are often at the bar on a Friday night, sitting around crying in their beer about how they're going to get the money to start up again when the season opens. I work with a lot of seasonal people, not the only people, but a lot of seasonal people. I know how they roll. When I encounter them, we're working to get them into the strategically leveraged position, because when you get there, you don't work as hard. And when you're there, you have folks like you that you add in the early days, you keep them around because they have a benefit in your business. You have your colleagues because you need your colleagues to come together and talk about business. You cannot do business and do it successfully in a vacuum. It just doesn't work. But here's where you start to get a real return on investment for building that network, and that's with the sages. The sages are the people who, in the early days of my business, when I started referring business, so some of you will know that I have an income tax business and a business coaching business. And in the income tax business, I only help sole proprietors. So of course, being a good business coach, when my client gets to a place where they're either at risk or they're making so much money that they need to be incorporated, I advise them to become incorporated. But the business of my tax business, when I'm in that role, I'm thinking I'm going to lose them when I refer them to somebody else. The first year that I did referrals for incorporation, when I had a storefront, I referred 14 businesses. 14 businesses probably gave the accountant 20,000 in revenue. If I'm referring 20,000 in revenue that you didn't have to work your ass off to get, I need to be getting a piece of that. I need to be getting a piece of that. So it was my sage that came to me and said, Debbie, that's a lot of business to be sending to somebody. You need to be getting a piece of that. I didn't snag that out of thin air because I don't know, just like you don't know what you don't know. I was not somebody who was raised with business people all around me who knew about all of the ways that people do business and all the ways that people build revenue. So I needed to surround myself with people who knew way more than me and who gave that information away generously. which is why I belong to a mastermind group right now. When I listen to what they're saying, I'm a big at implementing new information, and I take away nuggets every single time I attend an event that I would never get anywhere else. So you need these sages around you. These sages are going to save you and your business. And the next piece you need to have is an affiliate. You need to have an affiliate network. And those sages who showed me how to get money when I referred clients who were going to incorporate started me on the track to having an affiliate revenue stream in my business. And now I'm even more strategic with it. You know, I'm doing back at the colleague place. Now that I'm smarter, I can go back to the colleagues and I can say, let's do stuff together. Let's take your market and my market and do some cross marketing, and let's start helping one another out here. There's money in it for me, money in it for you. We start broadening those networks, and I'm going to just end there and move on, because what I really want to do is open it up for discussions, because I know now that you're thinking about some of this stuff and wondering, how is it that you get a toe in the door to start doing some of this stuff that's going to generate revenue in your business? It is the end of the formal presentation. Now we're going into the question and answer session and the coaching session. I call it coaching in the hot seat. But I did mention to you that I'm giving away 1 free hour of coaching, and that's a $250 value. The only way you get to have your name entered into that draw is be the first person who emails me at Debbie@PeopleCanBiz.com. It should have been written on here. It isn't. Debbie, DBIE at PeopleCanBiz.com. You send me a question, and no, you answer a question that came up here today. And if you're the first one to email me with that, I'm going to give you a free hour of coaching. And now we're going to turn it back to the floor, Chris.
Great, thanks so much, Debbie. So when you just started your presentation and you're talking about networking and how going into those rooms, it was kind of something that you weren't quite comfortable doing. You mentioned a business coach. So at what stage did you reach out to a business coach?
Oh, I reached out to a business coach pre-revenue. So I had the urgency. Like, there was no going back. Nobody would hire me. I'd already been down that road. And what I did was put my stuff in storage and started traveling around to different provinces looking for work. And along the way, I was in Ontario, and I got a business coach for free through the Ontario government.
Oh, wow, great.
And it was him that actually said, if I knew what you know, because I'm a mechanic who's been to law school, so you can imagine that I have a little bit of information tucked away. And he said, if I knew what you knew, I'd be a millionaire, but you're flat broke. And I was slightly irritated.
There you go. Great. So one thing I will mention to participants, if you're wondering and wanted to ask a question, again, the Q&A box is below. Please feel free to write any questions at any time. So we do have a number of questions here as well. So Debbie, I'm just reading one of the questions here. How do you start to build an affiliate network, and what considerations come into determining how to compensate that affiliate?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So I think when I think about taking somebody on as an affiliate, they have to have the same kind of value system that I have in my business. So I run a pretty, above board, ethical, I take very seriously that, want to lose my tax license because it's my sure thing. So when I come alongside with somebody, they have to share in the values. I have somebody now actually that's trying to build a relationship with me so we could do the affiliate thing. And the kinds of things I'm trying to figure out are what's in it for me, just like I need to coach them and what's in it for them. And the thing that I sell is a signature program. It's a signature program. It's a 3-month program. And the compensation for that is 40%. So the program is $6,000. They get 40%. That's a nice chunk of change. But I didn't have to do anything to earn that business. I believe that you need to compensate people well, because it's, if you know how to strategically use that person to get to another person, you don't need to worry about that you've given up that revenue.
Right. So, and you mentioned that your network is vast now, and you have a lot of people that you have an affiliate network with. How did I'm kind of interested because, how would you start that conversation of, I can understand if you were giving them business that you could say, is there a way that I can, receive a certain percentage of the business from that? But how did you yourself get it so that they were paying you? How did that discussion start? Can you just walk me through that step?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm going to give you a very concrete example. I was a rookie, a newbie, a naive. I did everything wrong before I did it right. I want to get that out there. So the first affiliate revenue that I had came about like this. I had referred a piece of business. Somebody came to me and said, I got a business I want to sell. Do you do that? Because they thought I just did everything. And I'm like, no, I don't do that, but I know people who do everything. So I call up somebody that I know that's a broker, and I say, I got a fella who's been in business for a while, he'd like to sell his business, yada yada yada, I'm going to send him over. I never thought anything of it. Wasn't sitting there saying, I wonder what I'll get from that. I mean, I do today, but back then I didn't. So I refer this piece of business, months go by, and I get a gift card in the mail for $50, $50 grocery card, and a thank you months later saying, thanks for referring that piece of business. So when I get a $50 gift card, because I come from a background of people who don't have a pot to piss in, I think if they gave me that without me asking, how much should I have gotten if I was smart? And anyway, I have a broad network of sages. So I went to them and I said, a lawyer and an accountant, I said, look, I'm curious about this. My spider sense is saying something should have been different here. So they told me, if this is a business sale, it's two-part process. One does evaluation on the business to see if there's anything to sell, and then they sell the business and there's revenue in that if there's a viable business there. So I went back to the person and said, look, this won't be the last time I refer something to you. This is what I found out. I'm like as open as this. So I would say, Chris, this is what I found out. Like, maybe I should have been getting a little bit more. So let's talk about that, because I don't know what I don't know, but you know what I don't know. So this is that power dynamic, right? So I said that to this gentleman who had a value system that mirrored my own. And he said, okay, fair enough. That first piece runs about $5,000–6,000, the valuation piece. So I got $375 for that. And then they did the valuation. That became, I had to report that as income under affiliate. And then the business was up for sale. The business is not sold, but when the business sells, I'm in 6%.
Okay, great.
That was the first piece.
Oh, okay. Very good. So, Debbie, we were talking beforehand, before the participants joined, about small businesses and really feeling the burden and the exhaustion, I'm sure, going through this time. Someone not starting out as an entrepreneur, what would you recommend to a small business owner that is just coming out of COVID, just opening up? What's some steps that they could take to get that revenue going quite quickly?
First of all, I think that it's very important to always acknowledge the situation that we live in. It's never been more important that we develop deep and intimate relationships so that we can bring our business forward. But we have to talk about the crabs in the bucket mentality, where it's each person for themselves often, and there isn't that strategic sharing that takes place. And oftentimes we live in this kind of a climate. And, I wrote the book about money mindset, and changing my mind about money, it actually helps to lower that veil of judgment and reach out to people and say, I need help. So my first piece of advice to anybody coming out of this, especially somebody who's I have clients that are in the tourism sector, for example, is you need to get really humble now and realize it's not just you anymore. It's everybody. And now you need to, I'll give you an example from the tourism sector. I'm working with somebody right now who's, I'm a veteran, and we're coming back to our roots, right? So we've not seen our provinces as tourists, for example. When I went to Newfoundland this time, I had never been to many of the places that I visited. So we need to reach out to people and say, do you know some of these people are in this situation? They have the disposable income to be able to do the staycation thing in a large way. Who do you know that can do that? So I would say still building the relationships.
Right. Okay. And and that's, you know, that's a great piece of advice, is always kind of using your network. If you don't have a network per se, and we talked about building your affiliate network, but a lot of this, you know, you're unable to network because you're not able to meet in person. Now, thankfully, we've got some new guidelines that opened up yesterday where, you know, groups of 50 can meet with physical distancing. But if you're unable to network in person, is there any suggestions that you would have on how to network virtually?
Yeah, you need to partner with the person who is very adept at doing the networking. Like I have a Pan-Atlantic networking once a month, and people who know that are coming alongside now. I actually had somebody come and say, can I sponsor your event, because they wanted me to showcase who they were. So you have to be bold. You have to boldly go and do stuff you didn't do before. You know, I mentioned before the importance of communication. If you're somebody who doesn't, even before COVID, if you were somebody that entered a networking event, didn't really like it, even if we, back in the day when we didn't social distance, when we crowded in like cattle, if you couldn't make your way around that room and talk to the key players, you may have a skills gap and need to learn very quickly how to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and learn how to communicate well.
Right. Do you have a tip of, I like that, you know, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Is there a tip, one tip that you would have for that?
Yeah, just I can remember, I didn't always used to be uncomfortable. I was extremely shy. I'm an introvert. People don't notice about me, but when I started, I was an introvert. So I didn't know how to do any of that. And I had gone to a little event where she asked people to come up on stage and demonstrate something. It wasn't a business thing. It was a fun thing. Everybody was drinking, and they asked people to come up on stage. And my friends that were around the table forced me to go. We had to put on a grass skirt when we got on stage, if you can imagine. I was mortified. I mean, I was shy. I was like dying. But it and a dozen other examples of me being pushed over that edge have really strategically altered the way that I do business.
Okay.
So if you can't yourself in control, like ask somebody to help you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. So a question that we have here is, attitude matters. When you're going into business, what are some tactics to remain focused when you're not seeing the results?
Well, I had a lot of that. I had a lot of time to hone that skill. So, you know, I'm tenacious. I think one of the things that we have going for us here in Atlantic Canada is that we have resilience, and we can remain focused when things are tough, and we have a great sense of humor. So this isn't our first time being in a hard place, right? So just as a people, I understand that there are people out there that have never had a drop of rain fall on them as well. But for those people who have, I think you need to take time out to cry. You need to take time out to be mad about the situation. Because if you keep holding that in and putting on a pretty face and saying, I am not disturbed by the fact that, you know, the good life I thought I created is gone now, you won't get very far. So if you have people around you, if you build a network, you'll get to a place where you have people where you can say that too. and they'll all commiserate and give you the pat on the back that you need, and then say, well, you know, time to like toughen up, soldier on, you got to get out there.
Yeah, no, that's good. Another question here, Debbie. How do you shift your strategy and mindset to open your customer network to those who may not have been previously using your service or buying your products?
And I think I'd like a little bit of an elaboration on the question. So she's asking, or he's asking what, Chris?
So it's more around mindset. So basically, say if you reached out to a customer or a potential customer and you offered your services and they declined you, how would you be able to kind of shift your strategy and your mindset to go back to them about using the same services, but they declined previously? Would you go back to them, or would you just move on to a new client or potential customer?
Oh gosh, no. So I think successful business is all about being humble. And I've had to go back to people and see if they were ready to buy. Sometimes they're ready to buy. Maybe they weren't ready at that time. Maybe I've gotten better at letting them know what it is that I can actually do for them, because in the very early days, I don't think that I was clear. You know, I needed to make money. I was less focused on the client. So if you're really focused on the client, you think they really need to have what you're selling, going back and having that conversation is good.
Great.
But I've had to go back. I've had to go back and ask people to help me out. I've had to go back and apologize for stuff I had done. And, you know, business success is all about being humbled. But at the same time, when you've knocked on a door over and over and over again, there's no market there. And I'll use an example from my own life. So somebody said to me, Debbie, you're not from Nova Scotia. They like to do business here, or like from the training perspective, or the coaching perspective, with people that they know, like, and trust, and nobody knows, likes, or trusts you yet. So because I was in the fast track revenue mode, my next question was, okay, so what do I do? So I could spend years getting people to know, like, and trust me, or I could take it out of Jerusalem, so to speak. So I started on the periphery. I started selling my service in Amherst and Cape Breton. You know, those people that were working in the oil and gas in Edmonton and lost their jobs years ago, not now, you know, way back. Right. I would go there and say, you know, are you an electrician that wants to start a business now? I can help you get that fired up. And so I circled my way in. All of a sudden, people started to be curious about, who's this Debbie gal? I never heard of her before. Well, she lives in Sackville. She has a little storefront, but nobody knows who she is. So I went around that. So all of that, to circle back to your question, you got to stop knocking on doors and they're never going to open, and develop the skill and develop a strategy that's going to work for you.
Right. So last question for you, Debbie, and then we're going to wrap up here. So what tips do you have for people who are looking to continue to build their network virtually when when an in-person networking opportunity is limited at this time? So we kind of talked about that earlier. But say if I'm new to Nova Scotia or new to Halifax, and where would I start? How would I start to build my network virtually? What groups outside the Halifax Chamber would you reach out to?
Well, I would definitely reach out to the Halifax Chamber. And of course, the Center for Women in Business and Nova Scotia Business Inc. and all of the places, and some that are in the tech world, wonderful, you know, wonderful associations. There's all kinds of associations everywhere. But of course, the assumption in that question is that the person has the capacity to be able to, like, maybe cold call and say, I'm new in business. Do you have anything going on online I'd love to be invited to? Because there are thousands of things going on. The people who are strategically poised to remain in business, who saw the opportunity in, you know, what was going on around us, have not been quiet or silent, or there's all kinds of new stuff. We are poised to tackle this new economy, which means the reason I showed up here today is not accidental.
Right. Great. Oh, that's perfect. So Debbie, before we close up and before I wrap up, is there any points that you want to make in summary?
No, the only thing I would probably leave people with is that you may be feeling a little disillusioned right now. It's my hope that you leave here a little inspired, because there is a lot of opportunity still out there. There are people that are spending money, and some people believe there isn't, but there is. But get going on building a network that works for your business.
Great. Thanks so much, Debbie. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Just so you know, the Halifax Chamber is hosting more webinars every week with experts who are leading the business community and also pioneering the new normal. You can head to halifaxchamber.com/events for next week's lineup. And this webinar was recorded and will be available shortly to all attendees on our YouTube channel. So thanks again for joining us, everyone, and have a great day and a wonderful weekend. Take care.
Thank you.